One of the things the existentialists would say is, what's the relationship between mental health and responsibility? That's a good question, because it also has to do with something like the definition of mental health and responsibility. If you want your life to be well constituted, let's say, whatever that means, and it doesn't mean being happy. The reason it can't mean being happy is there's going to be times in your life where you're going to be called on to act when you're not happy. For example, when one of your parents dies, you're going to make a choice. You're not going to be happy. You're going to be hurt and maybe even partly broken. So what the hell are you supposed to do then? The answer is, you should be more use than trouble under such circumstances. That's a good thing to strive for, because your mother's going to be equally distraught, and so are your siblings and everyone else you care for. Maybe by that time you should be tough enough so that in that situation you're good for something. Someone has to make the damn funeral arrangements. Someone has to settle out the will. Someone has to make sure the family doesn't degenerate into horrific squabbling, which is something that often happens after the death of a parent. And you're not going to be motivated to do that by happiness. And what if you have a sick child when you're a parent? Maybe it's a chronic illness. You are not going to be happy about that. It'll be a weight that you carry with you all the time. It's one of those things that seems particularly unjust. If being happy is the purpose of life, that's pretty much it for you, isn't it? These catastrophes that I'm speaking of, you can be certain that you're going to be exposed to many of those during your life. I think it's a rare period in anyone's life where one or more of such things isn't going on chronically. If it's not you with some terrible health problem or some other terrible problem, then it's a parent or a sibling or a child, or because you're connected to other people and they're vulnerable too. So that's the lot of human beings. You can't solve the problem of suffering by formalizing a utopia and joining it like a mass animal. You can't do that because you're not that kind of creature. Even if it was possible, you wouldn't accept it. You'd cause trouble because you're interested in trouble. You're probably more interested in trouble than you are in being happy. People like that, that's another marker often of serious personality disorder. I have clients, have many of them, who are way more interested in causing trouble in some dramatic way than they are in being boring and stable. They'll take any form of suffering and inflict any form of suffering on any number of people they can possibly get their hooks into in order merely to escape drab and secure normality. You call those people overly dramatic. That's one way of looking at it. Trouble is more interesting than safety. There is a view of life which conceives that where the crowd is, there is also the truth. And that in truth itself, there is need of having the crowd on its side. I think we were discussing gender differences, obviously, between men and women. And there are lots of people, the social constructionists in particular, who think that all the differences, there's biological sex and then there's gender, and gender is socially constructed. And that all gender differences are socially constructed, and there's no biological differences in gender between the two sexes. The biggest differences between men and women seem to be in what they're interested in, and roughly speaking, women are more interested in people, and roughly speaking, men are more interested in things. And so in Scandinavia, for example, you have a 20-to-1 proportion of women to men in nursing, and a 21-to-1 proportion of men to women in engineering. The Scandinavian governments now and then try to move that, so there's more male nurses and more female engineers. I was citing some of these studies, and one of the people that I was discussing said, what are we supposed to do with that? And I said, I don't know what you mean. Those are scientific findings. He said, yeah, but truth has to be established by consensus. And I thought, I don't want to live in whatever world you're going to end up ruling. Because truth is not merely established by consensus. And also, that's the truth. It's a pretty damn dismal philosophy, and it gets people into tremendous trouble. Because no matter how many people think there isn't a wall there, anyone who runs at it head first is in for a vicious surprise. There's a view of life which conceives that where the crowd is, there is also the truth. And in truth itself, there is need of having the crowd on its side. There's another view of life which conceives that wherever there is a crowd, there is untruth. To consider for a moment the extreme case, even if every individual, each for himself in private, were to be in possession of the truth, yet in case they're all to get together in a crowd to which any sort of decisive significance is attributed, avoiding voting noisy, audible crowd, untruth would immediately be in evidence. It will be said by the man of bustle, sociability, and amicableness, how unreasonable that only one attains the goal. For it is far more likely that many, by the strength of united effort, should attain the goal. And when we are many, success is more certain, and it is easier for each man severally. True enough, it is far more likely, and it is also true with respect to all earthly and material goods. If it is allowed to have its way, it does away with it, or transforms it into a fable, and puts in its place to be a man is to belong to a race, endowed with reason, to belong to it as a specimen, so that the race or species is higher than the individual.